when I was very interested in pursuing, like learning QHHT. There was no BQH back then. And I would consult Pamela. I've been so much interested in becoming a QHHT practitioner. What do you think? I'm so passionate. I've been following QHHT practitioners' YouTube videos. I will consult her. She's the one told me, how much is that? I said, this much, and the course 1 and 2 and 3. You don't need that. You are a shaman. You have to remember that. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars to learn this method. But now everything came to me. I was waiting for this BQH.
Yeah. Yes, that's great. That's perfect. I love that so much. That sounds absolutely correct to me.
Yes, I'm so happy. I was so happy. Thank you so much, Candace. But let's do the interview now.
Let's do the interview now.
Okay, so now this is going to be on the video, on the live. I mean, it's not live, but it's going to be.
I understand.
Yes. Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Keiko, also known as K.Angel. How are you doing? And today, I have a beautiful, awesome, fantastic guest. Her name is Candace Craw Goldman. Hi, Candace. How are you doing?
Hi, Keiko. I'm doing wonderfully well today. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much for this opportunity to have this beautiful, amazing moment together. I really appreciate it. By the way, I love your background, the beautiful brick wall, and the selenite lamp. I love it.
Thank you so much. I'm recording with you today in my wellness studio here in Augusta, Kansas, and this is one of the older buildings here in town. And I've really felt, I've been here now for about 4 years, and I think actually these bricks hold on to some of the healing energies that have happened here in the studio, and I just love coming here.
That is amazing, and we are going to go over about her BQH course in a minute, but I also followed this entire course, BQH. I officially finished entire course, and quite a lot of Candace videos. I saw this beautiful brick wall, and I was wondering, wow, this is so beautiful. Is that her house? I didn't even know it was your office. So.
Yeah. So happy to be in this place. It's been many things over the years, a little store and a factory and some other things like that, but now it's my little wellness studio.
That's beautiful. So, okay, Candace, a lot of viewers, so except my Japanese community, by the way, I am from Japan, and I have a beautiful spiritual small community in Japan, and but I'm going to post this video on both my Japanese community and my tiny English community, English channel. So probably if you are English speaker, you already know Candace. But I like Candace to introduce herself briefly. So what I know about her is she's an amazing hypnotherapist. She was a director and founder of Quantum Healing Forum, and she has been practicing QHHT and quantum hypnosis for over 10 years, 12 plus years, I think. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, about that long.
She was supporting and she was an assistant of Dolores Cannon when she was here on this planet Earth. Now she already ascended before us. But could you please introduce yourself in your own words a little bit?
Sure, I would love to do that. And I actually really love the idea that the wonderful people of Japan may get to say hello to me today, because it wasn't for very long, and it was a long time ago, but I actually lived on the island of Okinawa as a small child. And my earliest memories My very earliest memories, some of my foundational memories of my human life happened in Okinawa. So, and I'm writing, and I have, there's a lot of genuine heart affection for the Japanese people. I mean, I made myself a cup of tea even here before talking with you today. And I look forward to returning someday. And not only that, but my healing practice started with Reiki. I mean, you know, it was 1999, and I was facing a health crisis of my own. And I had been to so many doctors, and I had tried so many different things, and nobody knew what to do with me. And it was nothing life-threatening in that way. It was nothing terminal, but it was very painful. I had painful body conditions that were moving around and affecting different parts of my body. And I just kept going to doctor after doctor. And then I just discovered Reiki. And that was right, you know, 1999, 2000, that was right when Reiki was making its way to America in a way that wasn't prohibitively expensive. And I thought, this is amazing. And I immediately took all my levels and learned as much about Reiki as I could. And then I was just an artist. I was artist, photographer. This is my painting. You know, I was a mother, an artist, a photographer. I wasn't interested in being a healer for others. I quite frankly was just trying to heal myself.
I see.
And Reiki became an integral part of my life in my family. I found that I was doing Reiki every day on myself, my children, my animals, people in my community. And then, wow, that's giving me goosebumps. And so, but I still was just being a wife and mother. And then something else happened later. And that was that I was a photographer in Texas. I was in Austin, Texas, loving everything about life there, but really still struggling with my body. Reiki was wonderful, but it didn't completely heal me or solve the root cause of my problems. It was a great comfort. It was a great assistance. It helped me live, no question. And it solved a lot of other people's problems and animals' problems, but I was still kind of struggling. And I had this big photo shoot set up, and I had to cancel it because I was physically unable to show up for it. And it was this famous musician, and I felt just terrible. I felt like a loser. I felt like a failure. And I had what ended up to be, you know, the dark night of my soul. And I had this profound spiritual experience, just laying in bed, praying and meditating about, I just need to do something differently. And I did something differently. I actually, instead of like asking for help, I didn't ask for help that day. That day I asked for something different. And what I asked for different was, I must need to do something else because whatever I'm doing hasn't worked really. What am I supposed to do? So I didn't say like, please heal me, please fix me, please make me healthy to whomever was going to listen. I said, what am I supposed to do? That made all the difference in the world. I had a profound spiritual experience. And the bottom line of that experience was I was told to do 3 things. And one of those 3 things was to have a past life regression. And the very next day in my mailbox was a book that was mailed to me by a friend, and it was a Dolores Cannon book.
Wow.
And in that book, she said, you know, maybe you'd want to take one of her classes. And I'm like, who's this person? What does she teach? Well, she teaches, and it wasn't even called QHHT back then. It was called Dolores Cannon's Method of Past Life Regression. And I looked, and I read a little bit of the book, and I called up the person on the phone over there in Arkansas. This was back in 2008. And, you know, at the time, they were just opening it up to what they called helpers. So, you know, when Dolores first taught her class, she would only teach to hypnotherapists. And then she just was opening it up to people who, like me, hey, I'm a Reiki practitioner. And they went, you qualify. And I went, that's great. And so several weeks went by. And that's when I knew that Dolores, in her classes, she picks somebody to be the subject for a practice regression in her courses.
Wow.
And that's when I went, that's going to be me. I mean, months before I was even supposed to go, I knew it. I knew it in my heart. It was going to be me.
Wow.
And big things started happening in my body as I was getting ready to finally go to Arkansas. And all of these crazy magical things were happening to get me there. It's a long story. I won't go into every detail, but it was magical. And when I got there, and there was like 30 people in the class, maybe 35, and I watched as a great number of those people put their name on the list of volunteers. I would volunteer to be your practice student. She said, if you want to volunteer, I'm making a list. She had a little notebook right there. And I did this thing inside of me. Oh, Keiko, it was torture almost, but I did this thing. So you know what I did? I did not put my name on the list. I did not do it. And inside I thought, I'm testing God, which felt terrible, or I'm testing the universe, or I'm doing something. But I thought, no, if she picks me, even though I do not put my name on that list, my life will change, and I know that this is my path. And that I watched like 30 of the 35 people put their name on this list. Of course, who wants to have a session with the great Dolores Cannon? I did not. And it came time for her to choose who to do the session with. And she said, well, I usually take, I look at my list over here, and then I see which name shines brightly, and I know that's the one they want me to pick. But the person they want me to pick did not put their name on this list. So, and she stands up, and she walks down the room, and she stands right next to my desk, and she says, so, Candace, I have to ask you, would you be our test subject? And I just burst out crying. I burst out crying. I could cry right now.
I can cry too.
Everything changed. Everything changed in my life at that point, because I believed in magic. I believed in magic, and magic happened to get me there. Magic happened in the class. Magic happened in my session. And I've done nothing more than follow that magic every day since then. And so that's how I got here. And I've been doing QHHT and BQH now for, more than a decade.
You really gave me chill, Candace. I'm serious. And everything was all scripted in a good way. Positive soul contract.
Yeah.
Dolores, Candace, and for all the humanities, all the people who are following BQH, QHHT, it was all distinct.
Yeah.
Wow.
The higher self had told me in the session that one of the reasons I was having this continual problem with my body was I wasn't quite on the right path yet.
Yeah.
And it was then finally taking Reiki and then finally taking Dolores's class that put me on the right path. And all of those things with my body just faded away.
Completely healed.
Yeah. Now, not instantaneously, although in my session, my higher self did say we will work on the healing, but she needs to do, and then it gave me lists of things to do. And I sat up after that session. I was a little brat. I don't know if there's a word brat in Japanese, but I was a little brat to Dolores right away after sitting up, because I started asking questions that didn't quite make a lot of sense. And I think in the way that she had talked about, 'cause she talked about instantly healing, and I'm like, I still hurt. And she also talked about somnambulism and, you know, people not remembering their sessions. I remembered everything. As a matter of fact, I even said, you know, she said, well, how much do you remember, Candace? And I went, I remember everything. I remember more than what I even said to you. And she played it down, but I was a brat. And I was devil's advocate. It's also another thing we like to say. I would ask questions all the time. And I think Dolores, you know, she got to where she kind of liked that. She liked my spunk of asking questions. And that is how I ended up beginning the support forum, because I had so many questions and she was not available to answer them. And she finally said, well, if you start on a community then, and if you run it, then I'll give you my blessing. Wow. So that's how we started the original Quantum Healing Support Forum community back then in 2008. And we're bigger and better than ever, and we've expanded. So some of our practitioners are QHHT, some are BQH, some are Reiki or mediums or life coaches or yoga teachers or any. We've opened our doors to a larger community, and we've really broadened our thinking as well about you know, moving into the new earth. The practitioner these days, we're a little different than what we were 10 years ago. We're more awake. We're more individual. And we approach things a little differently than we did in the 90s and in the early 2000s.
Early 2000s. So, okay, you are both, okay, you are Candace, you are founder of BQH. And you used to practice QHHT. And could you please describe if there is any, the difference between QHHT and BQH?
Oh, sure. Well, BQH is based on the same kind of foundation that QHHT and introspective hypnosis and, you know, Alba Weinman, Michael Newton, Brian Weiss, any and all of these people use a relaxation, use usually a past life regression model, at least begins that. All of these methods are similar in that way, including BQH. And I love QHHT, and I still do QHHT sessions here in my wellness studio when I'm guided or when my clients want exactly that. But one of the things that has changed as we have moved into, you know, 2017, 2018 timeframe is there's an expansion of a lot of, again, individuals, but bigger things. So where there's restrictions and rules and limitations in many of these methods, BQH has done something different that, quite frankly, I haven't really seen out there in any other healing modality of any kind, which is basically here, we'll teach you how to do something, but we're going to make it this basic foundation, this basic framework. We're going to tell you how to do everything, but then we're going to say, change any part of it that you want, any part of it. Change the script, change the order, change how you do something, change how you approach your client, bring in Reiki, bring in sound healing, do it online, do it any way that resonates with you and resonates with your client and keeps the safety and the well-being and the goals of your client uppermost in your mind. Forget about any rules, forget about any guidelines, because it's time finally to trust our own inner guru, our own inner self. We don't need anybody else telling us exactly what to do anymore. Our wisdom is within us. And a lot of people want and like the guidelines, at least to begin with, and that's great. But once you get your feet wet, you might find that you like to change things. And BQH is all about giving you permission and encouraging you and celebrating your individuality as a healer.
That is beautifully stated. Thank you so much, Candace. So BQH is more like spontaneous and requires your own inner guidance and intuitions. You have to be maybe you have to explore your inner guidance yourself, and then you have to be more like use your like intuitions.
Yes, let me tell you, there's a story I tell sometimes that, and I didn't know it at the time, but I know it now. It was very integral to BQH, here that was being developed here in the year of 2018. But this happened in 2009. So I showed up the next year after taking my initial course with Dolores. I showed up the very next year, 2009, for her. And at the time, it was just a one day, you just sat in a room and asked Dolores questions. It was just Q&A questions. Now, there was a fella who'd sat next to me in my original course, and he also returned the next year. And this guy was much older than I was, and he had been a practicing hypnotherapist for 25 years. And he was just starting to look at this woo-woo stuff, right? And he was sitting in the classroom before this level 2 even started, and he said, Candace, how has it been for you? He really didn't participate much on our support forum, even though it was going. Some people do and some people don't, and that's okay. But he asked me how my sessions were, and I related some of what was going on, some of my questions, but also some of my incredible stories and successes. And he just was looking at me, and he said, well, I tried it for a while. I tried it for a while as an experiment, but I never had anything like what you were talking about. I would really, I tested it and I questioned it and I tried it out and it just didn't work. And what that man was showing me, what that man was expressing and illustrating so beautifully was he sat in those sessions kind of as a spoiler. I don't think inside he was saying to himself, I don't think this is going to work, or I'm not sure about this, or this is really weird, but, so his internal scape, his energy that he held within him, it was like a chemistry experiment, and we talk about this in BQH. So he sat in these sessions going, I don't know about this thing. I mean, he wasn't saying it, right? But his energy was questioning, and it was doubtful, and it was skeptical. And his clients may have been, I don't know, I have no idea who his clients were. His clients may be, yeah, okay, I'll try it. Or I don't know how, but those two energy forces together equaled not so much outcome, right? So that's when I really started understanding that far more than number of years of practicing or number of clients, far more important is the heart and the energy that a practitioner feels within themselves when they want to help somebody. Because I've sat many, many beginning courses with Dolores and with BQH practitioners where seeing people do their very first session, magic happens. Why? Because they're ready for magic. They believe in magic. They think this is amazing. Their client is excited. And those two things together produce sometimes jaw-dropping results. So that's how and why BQH talks about intention, setting the intention, and frequency and energy that you carry, and even some of your own silent thoughts that you might be having in a session. Because if your client is whatever they're doing, laying there, what you think to yourself internally, you must understand affects the energy in the room, affects the session with your client. So BQH is as much about dealing with yourself in a session as it is dealing with your client.
Wow. Yeah, so not only BQH, I think any type of energy healings, energy modalities, the practitioners, the healers, we have to be genuine for what we are doing, and we also have to have faith. We have to have passion, compassion, and faith. Believe that it's working. The energy is transmitting, and then it is working. Otherwise, even most powerful healing modalities, practitioner or healers themselves can block that from going to the client. I really feel that. Okay, Candace. So QHHT, as far as I know, the QHHT is still solely for one-on-one in-person sessions. And the BQH, like you said earlier, you can do online. You can reach out to any clients, any people throughout the world. And then also, I heard that you mentioned earlier too, not only online sessions. How about the surrogate sessions? Could you please explain about surrogate sessions?
Yes, I can. Now, we didn't cover surrogate sessions, not really in the foundational course, because as you were saying even before we started this interview, there's a lot of information there. But we absolutely will be doing this. But it's also one of the reasons why I did create BQH. So I'll tell you a story on how that all came to be. So those of you who know QHHT or have heard Dolores speak, Dolores did teach very briefly a surrogate way of using QHHT. And the way she would teach it is she would say, well, it was usually the mother, sometimes the spouse, but a relative, somebody close to whoever couldn't have a session. For whatever reason, sometimes people can't have sessions. They may be too young, they may be too infirm. There may be in a coma. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, but the person then would assume or connect, the session in a way that it would assist the person that they were having a session for. And so QHHT still does that, and that's beautiful and it's fine. And it's, of course, where I'm learning how and why some of this happens. But some of us out there in QHHT land, we were experimenting in a lot of ways that Dolores herself was not experimenting. And Dolores actually really, when she was alive, did not approve of some of these things. And one of the things, but that didn't mean we couldn't and didn't experiment. And so we did. So one of the things that we were doing, some of us, was a surrogate session where nobody who was even involved in whatever situation or the client was involved in the session itself. So let me explain. So I live here in rural Kansas, and there's one or two practitioners kind of in the area, but I stay very busy. And but I'm mostly, my community's online, and my father and my mother both. This was, I think, about in the year 2015, maybe 2016. They were both quite ill. They were in their 80s. And at one time, my mother with congestive heart failure, my father with a condition called COPD. And they were both on oxygen. They were both at home, but they were both on oxygen 24/7. As a matter of fact, they would walk, mother on her walker and father across the house, and their lines, would get mixed up because the machines were going, and that was how they were breathing. And it was hard. They were still at home, and I checked on them all the time, but it was still very, very hard. And I wanted to do a session for both mother and father, but both of them could not manage this for medication reasons. And for my father, he was a fighter pilot. That's actually how and why I was in Japan. He, as a young fighter pilot, was stationed at Kadena Air Force Base there in Okinawa. But he has ears, with the jet engines. He just doesn't hear very well. And he was not a candidate for a session. And I had two friends who live in Oklahoma, and they together, both of them were practitioners. They were friends of mine, quantum healers, and both of them together decided to do a session to benefit my father. So one of the people laid down, her name is Laura, and Laura laid down and assumed the energy stream in the life of my father. And the other one is Joni, and Joni then had the session with Laura. But they, it's something completely outside of QHHT parameters. So, we wrote it down, we figured out a way of doing it. And so this is spawning BQH, right? But several years ago as a practice. And so Laura lays down, Joni does a session on Laura. Laura says, you know, she intends, there we go with the intention again. Excuse me. She intends to join with the energy stream of my father and do a session to benefit my father. And what I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about telling you this story. It's still so amazing. So, it's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So she immediately goes to a life, and guess what? She goes to a life where the man, she's a man, and he's a soldier, just like my dad in this life, you know. He's an Air Force pilot, but he's a soldier in this life. And in this war, he happens, it's probably World War I, but, you know, I'm not going to say exactly detail-wise. It doesn't matter. But he's captured by whoever, you know, the enemy is, and he's put into a chamber, a gas chamber. But he actually escapes the gas chamber. But the whole thing is about him being a soldier and his lungs being affected by gas. And so they go through the session just like a regular session, a past life session. They ask for healing. The higher self talks in a larger sense about all of the implications and carryovers of this past life. Can we have this, you know, can he release this? Because he would like to be able to breathe in this life. Keiko, the next day, he pulled off the oxygen and he's not used it since. It's been years. He doesn't need oxygen anymore. He does not need oxygen anymore. And my dad, who was still a little, you know, he was brought up differently than me, and he was always very supportive of me, but had no clue about what I'm doing, no clue about Dolores, none of that. He was just like, okay, whatever it is you do, good for you, you know. And I'm like, well, we're going to try this. He's like, sure, try that with anything. And then the next day, he just could breathe. And I said, well, how are you feeling? He's like, I'm different. I can breathe. I feel so much better. And so then he started saying things like, those ladies healed me. And I'm like, wait a second, because, you know, as quantum healers, we know that this is a higher self agreement, and they didn't heal him. This was simply communication. He allowed it. It was this session. It worked beautifully for them, brought them up in a few weeks' time, and my dad's just astonished. And let me tell you what happened then, because it gets better. My mother is still on her machine because she has congestive heart failure. And she wants some of that, right? She says, can those ladies heal me too? You know, and I'm still saying, wait a second, Mom, it's not exactly how it works and whatever. But guess what? They do a session then several months later for my mother. And I said, because Mom, it's different. Dad has COPD, you have congestive heart failure. And she had her condition for many, many years, much longer than my father. And she also, I love my mother. She's since passed. And I know she forgives me for saying this, but she was very stubborn, and well, they both were, but she's very difficult. She sometimes can be very negative. I wasn't sure how it was going to work. I mean, we never know. We just never know. And I said, sure, Mom, let's ask Laura and Joni to do a session for you. Keiko, the same thing happened. Same thing happened the next day. The next day, my mother could breathe. And she went on and off oxygen for a while, and then she left it off. Same thing. She didn't do it quite as dramatically, but she ended up turning the machine off. She didn't have the machine. But something even bigger happened with my mother than the machine. She stopped being so negative. She was towards the end of her life. Now, this is the kind of healing that she had. I want everyone to understand this, because healing doesn't always mean you take somebody she was 89 years old at the time. She did not become an athlete, okay? She did not. She was still infirm. But she was able to turn the machine off. She turned the oxygen machine off after having been on it for years. She was able to do that. But she still had congestive heart failure, but she became less negative. She became pleasant. And wouldn't you know it, that was in January of 2016. Mm-hmm. And in May of 2016, my mother suffered a stroke. Mm-hmm. And she didn't pass away immediately. It was several weeks later, about 3 weeks later, she passed away from complications due to the stroke. But from January until the time that she passed, was one of the most beautiful times of my mother's life. And she was loving and approachable. And even during the aftermath of her stroke, she was beautiful. And the last thing she said to me was, "I love you." And the last thing I said to her was, "I love you," as I was doing Reiki on her as she was passing. And I know that quantum healing session that she had, that surrogate session she had in January, healed her, right? It doesn't mean it extended her life and made her invincible and, you know, gonna live forever. She did not. But I also know that that session made the last few months of her life extraordinary. And it was one of the most beautiful healings I've ever seen. So did it heal her congestive heart failure? Oh no, you know, no. But she got off the machine, dropped the negativity, and she exited her life in peace.
In peace. Wow, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing us, Candace. It's so beautiful, almost made me cry. I think that your mom's, that was her decision to transition, decision to probably ascend first, earlier than we do, right? And it's this is people think, well, you know, you didn't survive, you just couldn't win the battle of the illnesses and you die, they die. If this is not a, you know, sad thing, this is not something to really, you know, cry for or feel sorry for. This is my own opinion, but this is a beautiful thing for me. And this is you know, nothing but just a transition and go on to the next journey. And your mother was able to enjoy the last few months of her life, probably the best one of the best moments of her life, and with her family members. And she was happy and she was fully ready to go on to the next journey. That was beautiful.
Thank you. I have a fun Dolores story to go with this. So somewhere after January, but before her stroke, I was visiting and I was there and we had, during small amounts of the day, there was a lady who would come and help in the house. And I got there, my mother would sleep very late. I got there right as she was waking up and she came and sat at the breakfast table and she looked at me and she goes, and she asked me and the caregiver lady whose name was Robin, you know, Robin, who was the lady who was here last night? And I looked over at Robin and Robin's like, and I knew, you know, I'm like, well, what are you talking about, Mom? And she said, well, some lady came into my room last night. And I said, really? And I said, well, what did she say? And you know, Mom, again, you know, medicine and infirm and not really remembering everything. And she sat and thought for a moment. She goes, well, I don't know what she said, but I know it was very, very important. I'm going to try to remember what she said, but for some reason I just can't remember, but I do remember her just standing there. And I said, oh, and I said, Mom, do you remember what her name was? And she said, no, you know, and she went back to eating her toast and tea. And then she said this, which was just, I love the story. She goes, you know, I'm not sure, but I think her name was Doris. And what's funny about my mother is if anyone who knew her throughout her life, she would always get somebody's name just a little bit wrong, just a little bit wrong. And I'm thinking, boy, and so then later, you know, sometimes in sessions or in my own meditations, I've been able to communicate with Dolores after she transitioned. And I said, Dolores, I said, you know, did you visit my mother? And she really laughed. And she said, you know, she said, I've known your mother more lifetimes than I've known you. And that's all she would say. And I thought that was such a gift too. So, you know, they may even be working together now, for all I know.
Yes, I think they are listening to our conversation.
I think they are.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. So, okay, I have a question. It's you know, either any type of quantum hypnosis, quantum hypnosis therapies or past life regressions. So, I also heard, I have never tried myself, you know, either BQH or QHHT as of yet. I will. But so some of my, for example, people in my Japanese spiritual communities, and also I've heard or I've read in a spiritual community here in the US. So not everybody or not many people can go into like under the hypnosis, you say somnambulistic states.
Yeah.
So people who are not even be able to go under, so they still can have like profound healings and some profound experiences by just having one session.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of misconceptions here. You know, a lot of it has to do with TV and stage hypnosis. And quite frankly, and you know, she knows I love her, but Dolores herself made this difficult because she would say, you know, I take my clients to the somnambulistic state. And here's the thing, some of them would go to the somnambulistic state. They did. And some of my clients go to the somnambulistic state, but not everybody does. As a matter of fact, you know, people who've listened to me in interviews before have heard me say this. I was regressed by Dolores Cannon. And one of the first questions she asked me when I sat up was, how much do you remember? Because it was in a class. And she was kind of trying to prove a point that I wasn't going to remember. And I'm like, I remember everything. I remember more than I even told you. I remember specific details. But at the same time, I also knew what was going on in the room. I could hear paper crunching over here. I could hear somebody coughing. I could hear when the door opened. It was a ballroom in a hotel room. I could hear when and I knew exactly what happened. Like some hostess was going to bring in some more tea or whatever for the table. And I felt the entire room go like this. I felt like the energy of people saying, no, go away. I felt it with my eyes closed at the same time I was having my session. This is particular to the individual. It's also particular to our time frame. I actually believe less and less people are somnambulists. Why? Because when Dolores first started this back in the, quite frankly, in the late 60s or sometimes even in the 70s and then all the way up through, you know, till the end, and people were having past life experiences, people weren't talking about that back then. People were talking to their higher selves or angels or guides or ETs. Oh my gosh, no, that was scary stuff. Nobody was doing that back then. We as a culture, as a people, as humans, we weren't ready for it. So guess what our ego did, which it's supposed to do? It helped keep us safe. It compartmentalized. It said, okay, we're going to sit over here and we're going to kind of go to sleep while you do this other thing over here. And that's not happening with everyone now. And as a matter of fact, it is my view of what kind of New Earth and Ascension is right now, is that we are bringing our higher selves into the conscious mind and form and physical body. That's what we're doing differently now in this kind of ascension. It's like a physical ascension. So I say, and I think, and I'm watching less and less clients be somnambulistic. So it's all about expectations, this is not about laying down, being like under anesthesia and then waking up and then being fixed. It doesn't work like that at all. It has to do with agreements, understanding. More and more people's conscious minds go for this. It has to do also with belief system. It has to do with something. I just recently listened to another interview just yesterday, because I'm always learning myself. And I was listening to two BQH practitioners, also QHHT practitioners talk about this. And the way they phrased it was playing the game. So remember earlier when I talked about the one fella who came in kind of skeptically, that as a practitioner, and that energy, how that didn't bode so well in his sessions. Well, it's also up to the client to step fully into this, even if they feel like they're pretending, even if they feel like they're fabricating, even if they're doing that. It's a leap of faith, right? It's really, really trusting and really being open so much that you're not worried about doing it correctly or following all the things that other people say or what you've seen happen on YouTube, or, it doesn't work the same for everyone. Everybody is different, and information comes in many, many different ways. And it depends on your own frequency and your own agreements, your own contracts, your own belief system. But I love the way my colleagues yesterday were talking about it, because some people come in and they kind of want it to be proven and given to them on a platter as well. But I like the way my friends said it yesterday. I've never used the phrase myself, but playing the game. They were like, if you're ready to play the game, yeah, let's do this. And other clients are, and I don't blame them for this, because this is the way we're kind of taught. I mean, in a larger sense. Our culture is taught to do things correctly, do things by the book, or to have things bestowed upon them. Like this, I'm sick, so I go to a doctor, and then the doctor does this, 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 and then I can be healed, when it really doesn't work that way. The healing actually comes this way, and it's the same with a BQH or QHHT session. It comes from within. And so the client that lays there and expects some outside force to be bestowed upon them or to take them over is going to be likely disappointed. They have to be in touch with the inner portion of themselves. Now, see, some people will do this thing though, and again, it has to do with expectations and preparations. They will want an authentic session so badly that they will actually inhibit the impetus that's trying to come out of them, because they think, oh, well, that's not right. I just thought about that yesterday, or that can't really be real or authentic because I read that in a book, or it's what I really want or something. And so they're actually holding that in because of a misunderstanding a little bit about how this works. And again, it's all different. It's like a souffle or a soup. We're all different. We're built differently. There's different things that can happen. And practitioners can hopefully guide you through some of this. Some people, yeah, they do go completely out. Other people feel like they're just close their eyes and sitting on the sofa. And quite frankly, that's the way I felt many years ago, just like that, being in that room with Dolores Cannon. Although the longer you lay there and play the game, the more it just kind of flows, right? And then the deeper some people really go, and the more relaxed you go.
Wow.
So,
wow, that's interesting. So okay, if you say most people don't go into the somnambulistic states. So like you say, your first session with Dolores, you can hear, you can sense, you can feel everything, what's going on around.
Yep.
So at the same time, your eyes are closed, and you can hear, you can sense, you know what's going on in the floor or the room. But
yep.
you can also experience your like another realm of experience, existence, or your past life. You can see in your vision or your feeling.
That's different. So some people see, some people do see, but other people just imagine.
Imagine and speak.
Yeah, but you know, it comes differently for everybody. So some people only hear things. Some people absolutely see things. Some people, and it's kind of like sitting on a sofa and either watching a movie. So you could be sitting on a sofa and you're so engrossed with the movie, and then some people come into the room and you know they're there, but you're not listening to them because you're watching that movie. But it can also be you're reading a book. Now there's no pictures with your book. You know, you're just reading a book and people can come in and you know they're there, but you're just engrossed in this story. And then some people hear, but some people just know, right? Mm-hmm. And some people actually sense in their bodies. So there's a lot of different ways that information can come to you. We use the term, especially in English. Now, I don't know about, you know, the Japanese culture, but we say see a lot when we don't really even mean the word see. So that, for example, here's a very common example. I see what you mean. Well, you might not see anything what you mean. You're just using that as a word, right? So you can experience something. And one of the ways that you can even test how you do it is, I might ask you to think about a red bird right now. And then I might ask you to put a hat on that red bird. And then I might ask you, okay, what kind of bird was it? Or what kind of hat was it? Now for me, it's always a cardinal. Right, there's a red bird back there. And it's always a top hat. Right. But it might be a robin for somebody, and it might be a Easter bonnet. I don't know. How did that come to you? The information, though, I bet came to you, right?
I exactly imagine what you just said, the cardinal and the top hat.
There you go. Right? Okay, so here, let me ask you something. What color was the top hat?
Brown, dark brown.
See? And it could have been black or green or whatever. Now, I don't know if you actually saw it or if it's in what we call your mind's eye. You just know what it is, whether or not you saw it or not. So this is how that works, you know, and as long as you kind of engage that. But here's the thing, see, especially in Western society, we have told, and we've sent our children to school, and we've told them to not do that. Get your head out of the clouds. Stop imagining that. Mm-hmm. We've given them 10 minutes of art class, which, you know, hardly anything. We've reduced that skill. We've said, don't think about any of that. So people are rusty, you know? This is why. Why do we do that? Because you are a better cubicle worker. And forgive me if you're a cubicle worker that I say this, but this is how the world is run, right? By people who sit in their places, do their job for the higher whatever, and don't ask too many questions, and fill all the boxes and get it done and go home. And that's how school works, right? So school sets you up for that kind of work. It sets you up. So that's the kind of people we are. Quantum healing asks for something a little different. It asks you to be more open and more free and more flowing and more available to infinite possibilities out there. And we haven't been trained for that. We've been trained to limit everything. So it's harder for some people. As an example, if you're an actor, an artist, a poet, a writer, you probably, not always, but probably can do this kind of work a little better than somebody who is a mathematician, an engineer, an airline pilot. Because those systems are done on exacting rules that, now some of the mathmaticians might argue, because you can get very creative with some expanded math, and I can already feel Einstein in here going, bah, 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 bah. I met Einstein in a Pamela Arlen channel. Yes. He's been hanging out with them.
Wow. And I also feel Dolores Cannon by your side. I do. And a lot of times she comes, I'm sorry to say this, but when you mimic Dolores, how she speaks, she's really speaking through you. I can feel it.
Oh, thank you. That's a wonderful compliment. And I feel Dolores with me all the time. As a matter of fact, when my mom had her stroke and I was on the way to the hospital, I remember thinking as I was driving, because I would meditate in the mornings, and that's when I would hear Dolores the most. And I remember thinking as I was driving in the car, I wish I might have had time to meditate before getting to the hospital, because I didn't know what was in front of me, and I would have liked to have talked to Dolores. And that's when I heard her in the car. And she said, why do you think you have to be in meditation? I can talk to you in the car. Don't you always say that you're in hypnosis when you're driving the car? Yeah, so that's when I first heard her on the way to the hospital to see my mom. So thank you. I think Dolores is with me and with a lot of practitioners. And hey, even if you've never taken Dolores's class, but if you've watched her videos and you feel a heart connection, she wants you to know that you can talk to her. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be her student. You don't have to have even read her books. If you know who she is, if you've heard her voice, if you've seen her videos and you would like to talk to her, you can. She's one of the easiest beings on the other side of the veil to talk to. She'll talk to anybody who resonates.
Yes.
She will.
I really feel Dolores by just talking to you, Candace. I really do. Not even in this interview. I've been following your work, and I've seen a lot of you. I've seen you on a lot of other YouTube channels. And every time you talk about Dolores and you mimic Dolores, I really feel her. I feel her.
You know, we used to do this a little bit, even when she was alive and she was two. And we thought it was just kind of funny. But what I know now is we were already, you know what I mean? It was already happening. That connection was already there. And it's available. And it's more available now than it's ever been to everybody.
Wow, that's beautiful. So, okay, Candace. A lot of QHHT or BQH sessions, people talk about, those clients talk about ascension and the event. And so those people started talking about the visions of the event or the ascension, about 5D or the beyond. Do they have to actually ask those kind of questions to their higher self or higher selves or their guides, or sometimes spontaneously it comes up through a client's mouth?
Yeah. Well, you know, this work is endlessly fascinating. And I've done something between 11 and 1,200 sessions over the years. And after a while, you can't really, you know, you can remember some, of course, but it's hard to remember all of them. But they're endlessly fascinating because both of those things, of course. And sometimes, you know, people will ask questions and they feel that they're not even getting answers. Other people will, and more will feel validated. So they will repeat answers and they will say, you know, I just feel a complete validation because I was thinking that, but I wasn't sure. And so a lot of times sessions are validating. And then a lot of sessions can also be very surprising. And there are things about the event or things about personal stuff. So let me give you an example of kind of how it works and kind of how our ego or conscious mind, which isn't always a bad thing, please know that, plays into these sessions. So some people can come and let's say they are very focused on personal issues, personal health or relationships or their own deal. And they may be very reluctant or find it very difficult to have information come through. Sometimes if you ask those people who are so focused on their personal life, if you ask them some of the larger issues, it's like a fountain. It's like it all comes out. And you know why? Because it doesn't have anything to do with them personally. So their ego or their conscious mind is the one who's like really trying to, you know, keep things contained, right? And then when you ask about universal information, it's like, oh yeah, I can talk about that because that's not me personally. So it's really interesting. Other people are the exact opposite. You know, they can only focus on their personal stuff, and there's absolutely no resonance or information about the higher level stuff. It really depends. And sometimes it depends on what session. And some people have single sessions, and that works. And some people have many, many sessions. You know, Dolores herself early on had many, many sessions with people. Even like one of her famous books, Keepers of the Garden, she had many, many, many sessions with Phil. This idea of a single session came quite a bit later, when people had to wait a very long time to have a session with Dolores. And people still wait a long time to have sessions with some of the more, you know, dare I say, popular regressionists out there. Alison Coe, Alba Weinman, even, you know, my wait list is out there. So one tends to be what it is, but you can have, I myself have had more than a dozen sessions, and they can be very, very different and very focused differently, depending on who else is your practitioner. Their energy, like we talked before, will affect the session. What you're interested in, what your intention is, will affect the session too. And this idea of the event, excuse me, I don't have a whole lot of people focused on that. There've been some information, but not as much as some of the others. And what I have gotten in general in my own session is, it's a timeline feature just like so many other timeline features, and it's in flux constantly. And we are, it's like one of those diagrams, you know, the circle and the circle. Here's your reality, here's the collective reality, and then there's the intersection of it. And I don't know about you, but I've had glimpses myself right now of what that place will be, what that event is, but only glimpses. And for me, it's when I'm outside and everything is so beautiful, I'm just stunned with the beauty. It may be of a flower or of a sunset or of my horses or something very small. But, you know, the way the light hit my, my beautiful willow oak tree, you know, the other night, and I'm just sitting on my front porch crying. And I know that in some of those moments, I'm seeing glimpses of the new earth. Now, some people may see even more than that. They see rainbow waves coming through the sky. I've gotten people texting me about that. You know, the thing that we have to be kind of careful of is, which are we talking about? You know, are we talking about, you know, this reality circle, or where it intersects, and what you're focused on, and where you're dialed into, and what your energy is. There's all kinds of different realities out there. We're participating in an individual and a collective reality. They influence each other. And I don't make any predictions or you know, announcements about anything, just kind of report back. But practitioners are going to report back differently depending on their kind of clientele, their own energy and interests. You know, some quantum healers seem to only get ET experiencers. Some quantum healers get people who are really focused on body stuff. And here's another thing that's really interesting. We find that they go in sometimes geographical clusters. There's these French practitioners that they compare notes all the time, and they find that, like, when one does an ET session, they all seem to do them right at the same time. When one does a New Earth session, they all seem to do them right at the same time. And I have a great story about Dolores once, when I had, it was too astonishing not to talk to her about it. This is when she was still alive. I had three out of 4 clients in a row come to me who had metal in their bodies, you know, and they were having problems. You know, they had surgeries and implants of plates and screws and stuff. And I called up Dolores. I was like, and I didn't call Dolores very often, believe me, but I just had to. I said, have you had the SC heal that before? And that's when it blew me away. She said, just this week. And I thought, isn't that interesting? You know, she was just in Arkansas, just 4 hours down the road. And that's when I started, I'm getting goosebumps with that one too. Really, really seeing how these are the bigger influences, right? The ones that we might not even know about. And that's why the community of quantum healers is such a spectacular one, because we learn from each other like that. We're like, oh, wow, me too, just in this last week. And then we prepare notes and better assist our clients in that way.
Wow, this is also the proof that we are really all connected. Energetically, collectively, we are all connected. Yet we have different timelines. There are different timelines available, and each individual can tap into different timelines. That's why people say sometimes different things, and then people say sometimes totally like identical things, like hundreds of thousands of miles away from each other. It is really amazing. So Candace, this BQH course, so you are founder of BQH course, and it was launched back in July 2018, right? So can anybody take this course? Can anybody become a hypnotherapist or a practitioner of this amazing hypnotherapy?
Yeah. So in America, we kind of try not to use the word hypnotherapy, and the reason is because, and it's okay, a lot of people do, because there are many people who are licensed hypnotherapists, right? And so hypnotherapists are often licensed, so they go through a regulative board. Each state has its own laws for that. So we kind of don't even use that word so much when it comes to BQH. We just say practitioner. This is an energy method. It does use elements of hypnosis, absolutely, but that's a more general way of talking about it. Absolutely anybody can take the BQH course. All you have to do is be interested in this stuff to take it. We made it very simple for beginners. We start at the very beginning. And the information is there and available for you to refer back to. Dolores herself, when she started teaching, and it wasn't even called QHHT back then, she called it Dolores Cannon Method of Past Life Regression. That's what my first certificate says. Wow. She would only teach to hypnotherapists, only. Wow. And I know of at least 2 people who went to hypnotherapy school just to get that license to then take Dolores's class. And by the time they were done, she's already said, you know what, anybody can take this. And one of the reasons she did that was she found, and so this is why I want to talk about that. She found that sometimes clinical hypnotherapists or people, they were so kind of stuck in their ways, or so involved or invested, maybe a better way of putting it. They're so invested in a certain way of doing things, they couldn't quite break out of the box to do, reference the fellow I was talking about earlier, the 25-year hypnotherapist. He just never quite made the leap. Maybe it just wasn't for him anyway. But she found then sometimes some people who had no training whatsoever had some of the better sessions. Why? Because they were interested in the magical qualities of it, where some of the hypnotherapists might have, they bring in some of their preconceived notions that may not really have flowed well with her course. So I say the same thing. I say bring your skills, bring all of your skills. But when your skills or your teaching go to this place of dogma that do not allow you to expand or experiment, or they place these severe limitations on you, you might want to think about that. Now, some people are comfortable with that, and I'm saying that's fine. Make your own decisions. So the course really is for anybody. I love beginners. From the beginning of doing this work with Dolores, I wanted and needed some of the most basic help. So that's, I laid the course out like that. But the course is also, it basically says, bring all of your skills. You may have studied hypnotherapy, hypnosis, or different kinds of things longer than ever I have. Please bring all of those skills and more to this foundation, this idea of Beyond Quantum Healing that really, it's an intention and heart-based foundation for energy healers to bring all of their skills and resources into this method and change it up in any way that is comfortable for them and their clients.
Yes, okay. This is how I feel. So also the effectiveness of these sessions, it's very essential, important for the chemistry between the practitioner and the client. Am I correct?
Absolutely. You know, people will email me a lot and say, who do you recommend? And I try not, I try not to kind of give names. I will, you know, I'll say, well, you know, you go look at these people in your area or this list of people, and I'm happy to tell you whether I know them or, you know, anything like that, or if they're part of our community. But the most important thing for you to do is to look at them, look at their photo, read some of their writings. If they have any videos, listen to them, and just ask this part of you right here, how you feel about them. Again, it's not about how many years they've been doing this or how many letters are by their names or how many sessions they've done. That's not it. It's how much you trust them, how comfortable you feel with them. They may have just learned this last week and they may be so excited about this, and you may just like something about them. You may have a much better session with somebody like that than somebody who may be more conventional, more traditional, maybe more skeptical, you know, than the brand new practitioner. So yes, feel who resonates.
Oh, wow. And when I was taking your BQH course online, when you speak, I saw a lot of your videos. When you are speaking, you are guiding, you are kind of demonstrating your sessions. Your voice is so hypnotic. Your voice is so hypnotic. I couldn't even keep my eyes open. My eyes are so drowsy and heavy, and it really made me feel like if I have a QHHT session, BQH session, I like you to, you know, do the practitioner. you to become a practitioner on me. That's what I felt. I think, yeah, like personal energy, like energetic connections and feelings. It's very, very chemistry. It's very important.
Very important.
So, okay, I already asked you earlier, but most of the time, this QHHT or BQH, this hypnosis sessions. So if a client wants to be healed, whether it's spiritual, energetic, emotional, mental, physical, one session could really heal like drastically. One session is a lot of times all a client needs.
Yes, but, and you know, you know, I never ever make guarantees, and you just never know what's going to happen. And some people need more than one session, and some people, you know, it's a matter of perspective. If you are able to, you know, look at somebody's timeline trajectory of all of the things they've done or not done, a BQH session or a QHHT session might have been the very first step for somebody to get their healing. Kind of like when I had all those things with my body, and Reiki was my very first step to try to figure out what was going on with me. It took me another 8 years after my Reiki training and experiences to really get to the root cause of why I was experiencing in my body what I was experiencing. So did the Reiki help heal me? Oh, absolutely. But did it take away or completely resolve the root cause of my issue? No, because it just didn't. That wasn't my timeline. It wasn't the way it worked. But QHHT or BQH could be the exact same thing. It could either be the first step that eventually the person will figure out what's going on with them, or it could be the last, or it could be one of many of them. It could be any number of those things, and it all kind of depends. You know, when I had my session with Dolores, my own higher self said, well, we're going to assist her. We will begin to heal her now, but she needs to make this change and this change and this change. And I sat up and I'm like, hey, this is great. And I sat up out of that very squeaky rollaway bed. It had like a spring in my back. I'll never forget it. I'm like this the whole time in my session, and I still had a successful session, even though I'm like, how that hurt. But I expected, because Dolores said, I expected to like already be healed, and I wasn't. And I was like, huh. But then I also, listened to my tape and said she needs to make these changes, and I did. And then my healing came gradually, which means even after 3 months, and I made changes, I was still ouchy, I still had problems, and I'm like, well, I may be better, maybe not. But 4 months, 5 months after my session, then it was apparent. And we've asked over and over again in sessions, why is that? Why can some people, I've had people literally leave like hearing aids here at my studio. They walked out the door without their hearing aids because they didn't need them anymore. I kept them in case, I don't know, but then I don't know, should I have? I even asked myself that, is keeping them, does that mean I doubt it? These are interesting questions. I put them in a drawer and then I threw them away later. But, for me, apparently, even though I was doing this, my belief system needed a gradual acceptance of the healing, because whatever, the way I was, how that just worked for me. Some people heal instantaneously, other people gradually, and other people, if they make changes in the other direction, their issues come back.
Oh.
It happens, This is not a quick fix. This is not, I wrote an article a long time ago called Fix Me, I'm Broken. And that kind of client who shows up at your door and basically says, I'm broken, I need you to fix me. That client needs a lot more help than just one session.
I see.
They need an understanding of what true healing is.
Right.
It's always about, your contracts, your energy, what you're doing with your life, changes and growth that you might need to make, and referencing even my mother, who would have, liked to have had her congestive heart failure, but had one of the most spectacular healings I've ever seen. And it healed her emotions. It allowed her to be comfortable. It did not heal her congestive heart failure, but I consider that a spectacular and miraculous healing.
Yes, I feel that too. That's amazing. So while you were speaking, I kind of downloaded the information. I kind of understood. So anybody, any clients who is just who are just too dependent on outside sources and just expect somebody, some outside forces to come and rescue them or heal them miraculously, that their dependency, codependency, it's not like you are trusting your own inner healing abilities. You are not trusting, you are not putting faith on your own higher selves, so to speak. So those people, I think their higher selves are going to give them continuous lessons until they step into their own power. They become their own sovereign beings. So otherwise, they will continuously rely on outside sources or somebody, some guru, some God figures, something is going to fix their problems instantaneously. I think, I kind of felt downloaded the information. I understood what you were talking about.
It still can seem like that sometimes, though people can have, and right here in the studio, I've had, a vision of the Christ coming and standing next to a man, and that healing was so amazingly profound. Now, so how does that explain that? Because this man is, but what and sorry, there's a train here, so you're going to hear a train here in a second. But with this man, you know, his, the way I like to, he was poised with that Christed energy of himself there all the time.
Right.
The session gave him, that's giving me goosebumps. The session gave him permission to accept the whole thing. Do you see what I'm saying? I really believe it. You know, he felt finally worthy to accept that part of himself, right? Within this session. So that was the magic of this session. Even though on a 3D level, from a limited perspective, it may have looked like Jesus came and healed him. There's different ways of kind of looking at all of this.
Right.
And there's different kinds of healing too. You know, some people may have been born blind for contractual reasons, all kinds of things, and they may never be healed to be given their sight because of those other things, but they may get understanding and confirmation about why things have turned out the way they are. But you never know. You just really never know. I mean, anyone who says they know how all of this works makes me want to giggle a lot.
Oh.
I've been doing this for so long, and I will tell you, I don't know how this works. I can tell you what I've experienced. I can do the best I can in assisting you to facilitate sessions or have your own session. But I think we're learning all the time how this works. All the time. I mean, I get a lot of information from Dolores in the dream state, and that she has come to me in dreams and later and has said, wow, you know, one of my favorite ones is she used to talk about in her classes and in her videos, she used to talk about what she called Mr. Stupid. She would say Mr.
I heard about that.
Yeah, and she called the ego or the conscious mind Mr. Stupid. And
yes.
she said, we don't want the ego. We don't want the conscious mind. But remember earlier in our interview, we talked about this idea that, you know, we are combining, we are integrating these different parts of ourselves. And to say that a whole big part of us is Mr. Stupid, not really such a great thing, and particularly not anymore. And I had this most amazing dream where Dolores walked this being out onto an auditorium stage and said, I want you to meet this fellow. And I'm looking at him, and he looks kind of like a clown, and his tension was everywhere, and he was dressed in these crazy clothes with this really tall hat, and his eyes were going everywhere. And she brought him out, and she goes, this is Mr. Stupid. And I'm looking at her, and it was a very short dream, because all she said was, the first thing you should know is you shouldn't call him that anymore.
Wow.
That was it. That was the end of the dream. But it was so perfect, right?
Yes.
It was like, yeah.
Very fun dream.
And it doesn't feel good to call anyone stupid, right?
Right.
Not anymore. Right. This is how we are expanding as humans. We used to be able to say things like that. Even Dolores used to be able to say, Mr. Stupid. It doesn't feel good anymore. That's the resonance inside of you that has expanded and doesn't accept that anymore. It just goes, that doesn't feel good. Right?
Wow, that is, I got really like something, I got ringing my ears, like something came, right? Somebody came right here.
Yeah, this ear, my right ear, same time.
Yes.
Isn't that great? I love it. Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, we're doing some
Candace. So, okay, the time I have kept you long enough, I think, for today. So, Candace, BQH course right now, currently it's only introduced in English, and now very soon, I don't know how long it's gonna take, but it's going to be translated into different languages.
Yes,
and
it is.
I, Keiko, I'm going to visit Candace, in person in early December, and we are gonna discuss about translating this course entirely in Japanese, where I came from. So I'm so excited. I cannot wait to really connect with you in person. But could you please, if anybody who is interested in taking this course, or if anybody who wants to follow your work, your website, your YouTube channel, Quantum Healing with Candace, your YouTube channel. So could you let people know a little bit more in detail?
Sure. Well, the easiest place to find everything is our practitioner directory. From there, it takes you everywhere. And that's quantumhealers.com, quantumhealers.com. Yeah, we've shortened our names, so easier to remember. The social media icons are on there. You can also find me at my own personal website, CandaceCrawGoldman.com. But I need to do some updating of that website. Oh my gosh, I spend so much time on the community website that my own website is needing some attention. But you can also find the BQH course right there, up there on the tabs of the Quantum Healers directory.
QuantumHealers.com. So I'm going to post your information on the description box here. So yeah, people, everybody, you guys know that Candace is only one body, only one Candace. So she's been super, super busy. So, but she's doing fantastic, amazing job for humanity and for all of us as light workers community. So please visit Candace's website, YouTube channel, or quantumhealers.com, this network group.
Yep,
so
that's the directory too. That's the public directory. You can find all kinds of practitioners, QHHT, BQH, other kinds of practitioners of all kinds of methods, Reiki and natural methods and healing methods of all kinds. Theta healing, we're adding more and more methods all the time. And then from there, you can find the other communities, the support forum, and of course the course, and we're going to be doing lots of expanding with the course, so it's only just
all light workers and earth angels, right?
Yes, just like you.
So Candace, thank you so very much for your time today. It was amazing. It was wonderful to be able to share this beautiful moment with you and with everybody. So would you come back again for my channel?
I would love to do that, and I look forward to your visit here in Kansas.
Yes, I am so excited. I'm so looking forward for it. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and so I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much. So I'm